Here is James 1 verse 5 in NA 28. It reads, "I de tis himon lipete sophias, if any of you lacks wisdom, etito para tu didontos theu, let him ask from the giving God, pasin haplos ke me onidizontos, to all, openly and without reproach, ke dothesete avto, and it will be given to him." Verse is a little bit longer. It has a very interesting structure. It has a explicit conditional clause and an implicit conditional clause. The explicit conditional clause is introduced by the conditional conjunction e. So if any of you lacks wisdom, etito, let him ask. So this is present, active, imperative. I think we do it that way. 3 singular. Let him ask from the giving God. So if anyone lacks wisdom, let him ask. In other words, if the condition in which you're in is that you lack wisdom, the right response is to ask from the giving God. So that's the explicit condition. It is a first-class condition, if you're familiar with the 5 classes of Greek conditions. But then there's an implicit condition as well. This, etito, is a conditional imperative. Let him ask from the God who gives, and it will be given to him, is equivalent to if he asks, it will be given to him. But it places more emphasis on the imperative to ask. In other words, if you lack wisdom, let him ask. He must ask, and then it will be given to him. So a bit of time spent on the explicit and implicit conditions. Let's run through the rest of the verse. "I de tis himon lipete sophias." If any of you lacks, it's a middle, but it's intransitive, just means lacks. Sophias is actually genitive, feminine singular. The form could also be accusative, feminine plural, but lipete can take its object in the genitive, which is going on here. If any one of you lacks wisdom. Etito, let him ask, as we've already looked at. Para, from, and then to theu, from God, from the God. Why is the article here? Because God was already introduced earlier in the chapter. So it's the God who was mentioned earlier in the chapter. Let him ask from the God. And now he makes 4 statements about the God from whom he should ask. Number 1, didontos. This is a participle. You can often tell it by the nitav, active participle, and it's the God who gives. So the first statement he makes about this God is that he is the giving God. He is the God who gives. We should ask from God because he is the God who gives. And this is the most important reason that we are supposed to ask from God, and you can see that because it's placed in between the article and its noun. So it's been moved forward to put some stress on it. There are 3 other statements. The second one is that he gives pasin, to all. It could be neuter in form, but here it's clearly masculine. He gives to all the people who ask. The third statement he makes about this God is that he gives haplos, usually translated generously. The word normally means simple or open. He gives openly. So applied to giving, the idea can be that he gives openly, but that he gives generously, but that he's open to give. He's willing to give. It's straightforward. We ask our Father and he is happy to give. So I think there are connotations beyond generous. Generous in English tends to focus on how much do you give, whereas here the focus is more on God's readiness, his willingness, that it's a simple matter for him to give. And then ke is joining haplos to me one dizontos, not reproaching. This again, in case you missed it, is a participle, but it's functioning adverbially. So he gives openly and without reproach. That's the 4th thing. He gives without grudging. He gives without looking down on you for asking. You can imagine in daily life, quite often people ask us for stuff and we give, but then in our hearts or maybe in our words when they're not around, we reproach them. They shouldn't have asked, etc., etc. God doesn't do that. So he is the God who gives. He gives to all. He gives openly, and he gives without reproach. Me onedizontos. And then he says ke and dothesete, that's a future passive indicative, 3 singular. It will be given to him. And the clear implication is it'll be given by God. So if anyone lacks wisdom, he must ask. It's an imperative. He must ask God. God is the source of wisdom. And if he asks the God who gives generously to all without reproach, openly, it'll be given to him.